Hello and welcome to another painting video. In this video I'll be painting Sloppity Bilepiper, probably the most cheerful Plaguebearer out there. Such a fun model with his macabre bagpipe and dancing Nurgling. Let's start painting! First I paint some parts of Sloppity with Elysian Green. It's slightly watered down. I want his skin to be two-toned, so I don't cover the entire model. The parts I didn't paint are now painted with Bugman's Glow. Next, I shade the model with Terrapin Sepia. This helps to bring out the details and blends the two skin tones closer together. Now I'm going to dry brush the skin. First I use Cadian Fleshtone for the fleshy bits. Then I dry brush Agrax Camo on the green bits. If the dry brush overlaps, that's no problem. This all helps with blending the two colors. Now I'm repeating the dry brush process. This time I use Genestealer Flesh on the fleshy parts. And Creek Khaki on the green parts. To make the skin look more gross and sickly, I use Lamenter's Yellow on several random parts. Really makes the skin pop. Any pustules I can find I coat with Yenden Yellow. And I give a small dot of Screaming Skull to make them look ready to burst. For the last step, I'm painting his claws and nails with Storm Vermin Fur. And give them a shade of Athonian Camoshade. Lastly, I highlight them with Creek Khaki. In a few simple steps, I've already got an interesting looking Sloppity. I think having a two-toned skin really helps the model pop on the battlefield. I wouldn't do this for every Plaguebearer, but heroes always need a little bit more detailing in my opinion. On to the coolest looking bagpipe I've ever seen. First, I coat the fleshy part of the bagpipe in Gulliman Flesh. Then I coat Volupus Pink mixed with some Lamium Medium. I don't want a strong color here, just to change the hue a tad. The veins I paint with Genestealer Flesh, slightly watered down. Those same veins I now highlight with Flayed One Flesh. Some of the pipes are connected with a cord. I coat that in Basilicanum Grey. And highlight it with Administratum Grey. The pipes themselves, I want to have them look bone colored. First I paint them using Ushabti Bone. Then I shade them with Skeleton Horde. And finally I highlight them with Screaming Skull. The metal parts of the bagpipe I coat with Iron Warriors. I'm also painting any other metal parts I can find on the model, like his little bells on his heels. Brass parts are painted now with Balthasar Gold. Then I shade all the metal with Agrax Earthshade. And highlight with Runefang Steel. With Nihilakh Oxide, I create a verdigris effect on the brass. The bagpipe is not 100% done. I will finish it later on in the video, but it's already looking quite sickly. The fancy hood Sloppity is wearing gets a base coat of Corn Red. Then I shade it with Druchii Violet. The first highlight and layer is Screamer Pink. Then I highlight the hood with a mix of Screamer Pink and Pink Horror. Finally, I highlight with Pink Horror. By happenstance, I found out that shading Khorne Red with Druchii Violet really gives a very nice muted purple pink. I really want to use this color on other stuff for sure. The old Sloppity has been reduced to a head on a stick, and also has a very fun jester's cap. This I coat with Shyish Purple. Then I use two highlights. The first is Genestealer Purple. And the second is Slaanesh Grey. Using this color connects Sloppity to the rest of my army. We're also using purple cloth in one way or the other. The eye is base coated with Blood Angel Red. Then, with Uriel Yellow, I carefully paint an iris on the eye. With the Abaddon Black, I dot a pupil right in there. Be very careful. And finally, I use White Scar to add a reflection to the eyeball. The massive tongue gets a base coat of Sotek Green. Then I shade the tongue with a Drakenhof Nightshade. Next, I layer the tongue with a mix of Sotek Green and Temple Guard Blue. Try to keep it on the raised areas. Then a highlight of pure Temple Guard Blue. Another highlight of Temple Guard Blue, this time mixed with Nurgling Green. And finally a highlight of Nurgling Green mixed with a little bit of White Scar. I wanted a different color to make the weird tongue stand out on an already busy model. This blue tongue adds to the weirdness of the model as well. If I were to make a more fleshy looking tongue, I think it would blend in way too much with the bagpipe and the gore, which I'll be painting next. The gory bits get a thick coat of Voluptuous Pink. Then I shade the gore and the surrounding tissue with Carroburg Crimson. I do the same as the previous step, but now with Druchii Violet. The gore gets a highlight of Pink Horror. Then I base coat Averland Sunset on all the exposed fatty tissue. I highlight this with Ushabti Bone. And then shade it with Seraphim Sepia. Finally, I add a watered down Blood for the Blood God to the gore and the other parts of the body. By slightly brushing Blood for the Blood God on the skin, you create some sick looking patches and textures. Now we're left with a few details. Let's paint those. First, I will paint the wooden staff with Wildwood and highlight it with Baneblade Brown. The straps I paint with Gore Guntra Fur. The parchment gets a coat of Skeleton Horde and a highlight of Screaming Skull. Finally, we have a very jovial Nurgling. He gets a coat of Plaguebearer flesh. Then, a thick wash of Seraphim Sepia. For the skin to finish, I dry brush it with Creek Khaki. The eyes I paint with Blood Angel Red. The horns I paint with Black Templar. And highlight with Thunderhawk Blue. The tongue gets a coat of Emperor's Children. And a highlight of Flayed One Flesh. And lastly, a shade of Druchii Violet. Finally, I add Nurgle's Rot to both the Nurgling and Sloppity. Look for pustules so they're leaking green goo and add it to the gore. And here we have a Sloppity Bilepiper, ready to play some tunes for all demons within 14-inch range. This is another fun model in the Maggotkin range. I place him on a rock, which really adds to the character of Sloppity, picturing him dancing on an elevation while the Plaguebearer horde shuffles forward, goaded on by annoying Nurglings. Next up, I'll be painting the Spoilpox Scrivener, another bizarre Plaguebearer hero. Also join me on Instagram, where I post pictures of projects and behind the scenes stuff. For now, thanks for watching and keep dancing to the tunes of Nurgle.